The meeting of the Dudley-Charlton Regional School Committee is now in session. It is Wednesday, December 13th. We're at the Shepherd Hill Regional High School, and we will all stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our regular meeting of Wednesday, November 8th.
So moved.
Okay, any discussion?
In the section where we talked about MCAS, let me see if I can find that page.
Page 3.
Page 3. Okay, in the section where we talked about MCAS, let's see, I brought up the point that it appears that the biggest drop-off in the MCAS performance was between the 7th and 8th grades, and this could be in part because of the vast difference in the test itself, or there's a gap in the curriculum that we need to address, and that's not noted in the minutes.
You want that
Do you want the,
referenced in the minutes?
oh, did you add that later?
We added it, but it didn't get into this hard copy, I don't believe.
Okay.
Or did it?
Maybe it did. I was looking at the old version.
I don't think it's attributed to you.
I can give you the verbiage, Sandy.
Okay. So we will insert, and Mary will give you the wording. Anyone else?
And just an additional on the grade 10, halfway through, grade 10 may be easier. Grade test is remaining the same until 2019. It's halfway down.
Okay, what did you want inserted there?
It's not the grade 10 test is easier, it's just that the grade 10
Right.
test is not changing until
Okay.
2019.
Right. So, omit that. Easier. Anyone else? Okay, all in favor with the insertions and corrections? Okay, motion carries, it's unanimous. And I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our executive session of Wednesday, November 8th.
So moved.
Second.
And do we have any discussion we'd have to hold if we do? No? Okay, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous, Kathy?
No, are we taking our pictures right away?
It's right after the,
Okay.
are the kids ready, Bill? I was gonna do it right after the kids sing.
Okay, when do you want them to come in to sing now, or
Well,
if they're waiting for us?
sure, if we can just switch student spotlight and citizens forum, that would be great.
Oh, okay,
Because then we can do the spotlight, citizens forum, and then the pictures.
all right. So, the next on the agenda is approval of the warrant. Do we have a warrant this evening? Okay, we're all set with that. And now we'll do student spotlight, and it'll Shepherd Hill Chorus.
They need no introduction. Open the door.
One seems to hear words of good cheer from everywhere, filling the air. Oh, how they pound, raising the sound, o'er hill and dale, telling their tale. Gaily they ring while people sing songs of good cheer. Christmas is here. Ding, merry, merry, merry Christmas. Ding, merry, merry, merry Christmas. On they send, on without end, dear jingle tune to every home. Hark how the bells, sweet silver bells, all seem to say, throw cares away. Christmas is here, bringing good cheer to young and old. Meet in the hall, ding dong, that is our song. Ring, joyful ring, all caroling. One seems to hear words of good cheer from everywhere, filling the air. Oh, how they pound, raising the sound, o'er hill and dale, telling their tale. Gaily they ring while people sing songs of good cheer. Christmas is here. Ding, merry, merry, merry Christmas. Ding, merry, merry, merry Christmas. On they send, all without end, dear jingle tune to every home. All they send, all without end, their jingle tune to every home. Ding dong, ding dong. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Hark the herald angels sing, hark the herald, hark the herald, hark the herald angels sing. Whoa, hark the herald, hark the herald, hark the herald angels. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Sing it with me now. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Let's celebrate with joyful all ye nations rise. Join the triumph of the skies. With angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Hark the herald, hark the herald angels sing, hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Glory to the newborn King, with angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn. Jesus, he was, Jesus, Jesus, he was born.
No. Well, yes, but no.
These guys are, obviously
Wonderful.
wonderful. And we will be performing along with all the other choirs Sunday at Mechanics Hall with the Worcester Youth Symphony Orchestra on their stage. We're doing this number and the Carol of the Bells, and Mystique will be doing What Will Santa Claus Say on our own, and then we'll be singing two big pieces with the orchestra and the Hallelujah Chorus. So,
Very impressive.
yeah, it's a great opportunity. These guys make us proud every day, so
Great
thank you
job.
for having us.
If I may, before you leave, ladies and gentlemen, every time I introduce the Shepherd Hill, any group in the entire district, I usually precede it with the award-winning. And certainly this is an award-winning group, but it just occurred to me about a week or two ago that this is probably, these kids are going all over the community, all over Central Mass this time of year in particular, performing for all different kinds of groups, small groups, large groups, Mechanics Hall, all kinds of different places, hospitals, and really bringing so much joy to so many people. And let me say this, I'm equally proud of that as I am of all the awards that you've won. Okay, so we're really proud of you. You really mean a lot to our district. You're one of our gold stars. You truly are as a group. I also want to make sure I take this opportunity, so I don't have to do it next year, to introduce our new choral teacher, Becky Boussiere. She is, as most of us in this room know, replacing the person who I usually precede with, the legendary Connie Galley, who, you know, did such a great job for so many years, and Becky's really hit the ground running, and it's been just an amazing beginning to the year. So thank you for all your hard work, Ashley, Connie, and of course, Bubba, who prefers not to be called by his first name because it's a terrible name, Greg. So he goes by Bubba, but great appreciation for all of you. Thank you so much.
Yay.
And this is like that, Mr. Peterzak will appreciate, this is like the time Deion Sanders took the helicopter from a football game to a baseball game. She's just going right from... Can do the photos now.
So do we have anything for our student?
Maybe we should do,
To say?
she will have that time, just didn't get in there, so.
Okay. So we can do it after Citizens Forum?
And then pictures,
Okay.
and then the student.
Okay.
That's what I would suggest.
First pictures and then the student? Or
How
have
about
her
we
do
go
it?
citizens forum, then picture,
Okay.
because he has to hit the
All
road.
right, okay. That brings us to Citizens Forum this evening. Do we have anyone that would like to come up and address us this evening? Yes, come on up and state your name. You can take a chair if you would like to.
Sure. I'll stand. I'll be brief. My
Okay.
name's Sam Batar. Recently moved to Charlton. I just wanted to take a moment to introduce myself. I did a 3-year term on the Oxford School Committee, and I'm very much looking forward to getting involved in Dudley-Charlton. I actually already had a conversation with the special education director, and I'm interested in spearheading an effort to get the CPAC back up and running.
Oh, good.
I'm very interested in doing that, so I've been very impressed with what I've seen so far, especially these young men and women, and their singing is amazing. But I have 3 children in district, and very much looking forward to being more involved. And if I can do anything for any of you, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'm sure that I'll see more great and wonderful things to come. My children are at Charlton Elementary and Heritage so far, so
Okay.
be here for many years to come.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we will take a little recess for our pictures. Skipped Becky, but she is going to give us a little report this evening. So Becky, you have the
Yeah,
floor.
I've thought of a few things
Okay.
on the spot. So the first great news is that we found out today that a Shepherd Hill senior, Eric Pacina, got accepted into Harvard University.
Oh,
So that just shows, I was thinking about it just now, and I think that really shows how like Shepherd Hill has prepared students like him and a bunch of our other seniors who it's genuinely came back to Shepherd Hill, like the teachers, like the curriculum, all the things we've done to prepare him and like all that, him and students like him, you know what I mean? Like all the things we did to prepare, so that's really a great achievement. I heard teachers in the math department were celebrating, so that was really nice. And Ram Squad, of course, had a great season for supporting our football team and everything, and now they're getting ready to like represent our winter sports, our basketball, indoor track. They're doing really good. I think that really exudes how our student body is with supporting one another, and that's really great. And I know Shepherd Hill Drama Club has a play going on Friday and Saturday night, so if you were interested, please go. It's called Things I Want to Say But Never Will. It's gonna be great. And then, like Mrs. Boussiere said, the Shepherd Hill show choirs are performing, or concert choirs are performing this Sunday at Mechanics Hall, performing all types of Christmas classical music. And yeah, so it's gonna be great. We do this every year. It's a really nice experience to get to do that. Seems more formal than all of our usual things. And also, speaking of the show choirs, we also had a our annual holiday spectacular, which is always a big hit. And we love bringing joy and all the smiling faces to our community. So that's all I got for now.
Thank you, thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Becky. Very informative. We look forward to hearing from you. Next on the agenda is communications. Mr. Desto, do you have any this evening?
None tonight, Mrs. O'Coin.
Okay, how about our members?
I just wanted to say, Mr. Desto mentioned, but in the Worcester Magazine supplement, Worcester Telegram supplement, Dudley Elementary was rated second best elementary school in the county, and Shepherd Hill was ranked second for the high schools, which is very impressive. I don't know if you people get this, but if you want to see it, that's very impressive. The two of our schools out of the whole Worcester County area. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I just wanted to take a minute to thank Mr. Packard, Mrs. Dragon, and all the faculty, staff, and students over at Charlton Middle School for putting on another successful 5th and 6th grade social last Friday to support the Adam Dowell Scholarship Fund. And since that fund was started back in 2006, we've been able to award $22,000 in scholarships to deserving Shepherd Hill students. And this certainly could not have been done without the help of so many people. My nephew Adam was a member of that first 8th grade class at the new Charlton Middle School. And CMS definitely holds a special place in our hearts. So I just wanted to thank, on behalf of Adam's mom Christine and dad Fred and sister Angela, and all of his extended family, I just wanted to thank everybody very much. Through efforts like that, we're able to continue things like this, and it just really means a lot to us, not only as a family, but to a community. So thanks to all who were part of that. Thanks, Mrs. O'Coin.
Really nice.
And anyone else? Okay. And I apologize. I did get an email from Mrs. Cedarberg. Remember Jack was on the committee? And she was very complimentary to Mr. Desto. Did she send you a copy of it?
She did, but there's no way I was going to read that.
So next time, I will have a copy for everyone. Did everyone get it, or it was just me? Okay, so then I don't have to, but it was very complimentary, and that was very nice of her to recognize you.
And even nicer of her to let her kids go to our schools, because they were so great. They were so great.
I think if I can just say one thing, the thing that stood out was her complimenting your demeanor and your ability to move through very difficult times that the district has. And I think that was one thing that really stood out in her letter, because we have weathered some very tough storms over the last year, and I think it was nice of her to point that out.
Thank you.
So we appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
And no one else has any other communications, okay? Superintendent's report, Mr. Desto.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Coin. I have several things that I'm very excited to share. The first one is not one of them. I have a lot of good news tonight, but the first thing is bad but not surprising news. As I indicated in your package on Friday, we did receive written notification from the Mass State Building Authority that we were once again not accepted into the program for renovation, addition, or new construction. In speaking with Diane Sullivan from the MSBA, Shepherd Hill was rated a 2 out of 4 in the survey. Remember when they came out last year, it was roughly this time, it might have been a little earlier in the year. They rate the school's physical environment based on 1 to 4, I guess it could be 0 to 4, 1 to 4, with 4 being the most needy. And so we were rated a 2. And that's the only time in my career that I've been disappointed to have a good rating, really, because, but important to know is that MSBA was unable to accept this year anything but 4s, schools that were rated 4 this year. As with so many other things in the public sector, there's increasing demand and decreasing ability to fund. So according to Mrs. Sullivan, this year was an all-time low in the percentage of applications MSBA was able to accept. I don't know what the costs were, but the percentage of them. She did indicate that every year is a new year and that we should continue to submit what she called a comprehensive and excellent statement of interest. And she says we should only add details of any new deterioration, because she said the way ours is written, is the way they want it, and that there wouldn't be wisdom. I had thought about a couple of times over the years, looking into, are there consulting agencies that maybe help you write the statement differently? She said that she felt like that wasn't going to be a helpful consideration. So Mr. Chaplin and I will get to work again. We will submit again over the next few months. I think late February is the deadline for the core program. But as a district, depending on how things go this spring, we do have bigger things to deal with right now, but we may need to begin discussions about changing course here and considering taking this on ourselves as a debt exclusion down the line, or looking at an accelerated repair type of thing for the Shepherd Hill roof or certain other areas that we might be able to get some help with. So that's the bad but not surprising news. I will refrain from making another Cleveland Browns comparison. I promised Mr. Scabella that I would. Now for some exciting news, and I'll begin with the Massachusetts Chiefs of Police Association. Just a quick public recognition to congratulate Dudley Police Chief Stephen Weiner. Tomorrow, many of us will be there. Few people here at this table, along with some of our principals, will be there as he's sworn in as the president of the Massachusetts Chiefs of Police Association. And we all know in this room, Chief Weiner has been an absolute treasure to this community. I could tell you things, public and private, that he's done. Mrs. Rabbit just made reference to some of the challenges that we've faced the past couple of years. In almost every situation, the first text I get is from Chief Weiner, and he always says the same thing: let me know if I can do anything to help. And he does that all the time with situations large and small. Additionally, does his main responsibilities exceptionally well. And one of the things that I'll emphasize tomorrow, when I have the privilege of speaking tomorrow on his behalf, is that he has made a generation of children in Dudley comfortable with the police. And he and his officers, because it's not just him. He has some great people working with him too. And so we're really happy about that. So I could go on, but congratulations to Chief Weiner.
If you ever go into Mason Road when he's there, you should see how the kids just love him.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
He's like a big teddy
He
bear
is, he is.
that could do you harm if he wanted to.
He's up here, they're down here. It's like, yeah, really, they're so cute.
Yeah, so we're fortunate to have a leader like that. But anyway, moving on, I wanted to mention the Best of Worcester, and thank you, Mrs. Caballa, for bringing that up. Shepherd Hill and Dudley Elementary, that's quite a compliment to our district. A quick, just informative note that our calendar study group has set our first meeting, and that's going to be a week from today, Wednesday the 20th at 10 a.m. at Charlton Middle School. So we'll start the conversation about the calendar and certainly update you after that. I want to follow up on Rebecca's comments about Eric Pacina being accepted to Harvard by just letting people know how big a deal this is. Harvard receives applications from around 35,000 students worldwide, and obviously you're not going to pay the application fee unless you're really, really exceptional. They get some of the most talented and successful kids from across the entire world apply there, and they only accept about 5% of those, roughly 2,000. So this year we're fortunate that Eric was accepted. I want to make sure to congratulate him, also his family, and all the great people in our district, going back to when he was just a little boy, who've taught and inspired him over the years. I'll just add that he's still waiting to hear from MIT, but I'm pretty sure that he's going to go to Harvard to major in computer science. So proud of all our kids who get accepted to colleges, including my own at home, who certainly isn't going to Harvard. He's going to follow in my footsteps and not go to Harvard. But we're proud of all our kids who go to college. This is just a very unique thing that doesn't happen every year. Another unique thing that doesn't happen every year is we have a senior named Greg Gonzalez. And he's off to Europe today, maybe actually landing right about now in the Netherlands. He's a member of the United States cyclocross team. If you haven't heard of that, you're not alone. I hadn't either. But cyclocross is a form of bicycle racing that includes varying terrain and obstacles. It looks quite grueling to me as I looked into it. And Greg was recently named to the United States national team, which makes him one of the best in the world at this sport. He's also the youngest member of the team by a good margin. So he arrives in the Netherlands tonight and will compete in 3 World Cup races over the next 3 weeks, and we're very proud of him too. I thank Mr. Chaplin and some of the other staff at Shepherd Hill for being able to work with him to be able to keep him up on his studies while he's there. This is a very rare situation. his younger sister Lizzie, who's in 9th grade at Shepherd Hill, you'll have to follow the blueprint because she's expected to be a member of the U.S. women's team very shortly. And I just want to mention a couple of things that are happening Friday night. First, we have our holiday party from 5 to 7. There's also a really big girls' basketball game here at 7 o'clock, not because they're playing my alma mater, Holy Name, which is a terrific matchup of two great teams, but because proceeds from the game, T-shirts, donations, will go to the John Pear Student Support Fund, and there'll be some attention brought to the John Pear Fund and to his memory that night. So I want to thank Mr. Hackinson and his assistant coach, Maura Hackinson, for planning that with help from Sean Burke and several other people. Also, the Shepherd Hill Drama Club, already mentioned by Rebecca, has a play called What I Want to Say But Never Will. It's a great title for a show, by the way. And that's Friday and Saturday, 7 o'clock. I want to just mention that Saturday, they're also having at 4:30 a pasta dinner ahead of that. And the proceeds from the dinner and from the basket raffle with it will go to the Drama Club and to the Gay Straight Transgender Alliance. So if you're looking for a pretty cheap, great entertainment evening, $15, 10 for kids and seniors, you can show up, have a nice dinner, and see a great show. That is all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Desto. That brings us up to new business, MASC/MASS Joint Conference presentation, and Mrs. Antoshi, Mrs. Rabbit, and Mr. Desto will be
Thank
doing the
you.
presentation.
You want me to begin? Well, if you're not tired of hearing my voice already, Mr. Chaplin moved my podium. You didn't believe the budget cuts were real. Here's my podium that doubles as a thing to move the food around on. So, I don't mean to turn my back to anybody, but it's tough. I've got all these angles. So this began as Mrs. Antossi, Mrs. Rabbit, and I were fortunate to attend the MASC, which is Mass Association of School Committees, and Mass Association of School Superintendents. Those two groups get together and do this conference once a year down in Hyannis in early November. We were able to go to that. Every year they have a theme, and we always get some great ideas. Almost everybody here has been to it at one time or the other. You get some, like any conference, you get some great ideas. You come back energized about some new things. So we started out by saying, let's do like a summary of what we learned there and what kind of exciting things we might be able to bring back. But it very quickly became more than that, because this is the first year since I've been going that it lined up almost perfectly, the theme of the conference and some of the things we saw, with the direction that our strategic plan had already started to take. So now this turns into as much of an update on how our strategic planning process is going as it does some of the things that we learned at the conference, and jump in anytime that you want. So I'll begin with, if I can get this thing to work, I did before.
Excuse me, Mr. Desto, I believe the doors have to be open for the cabinet for it to,
Thank you. I would have never known that.
I learned the hard way too.
Okay. There you go. All right. So the first thing with our strategic plan and a lot of what we learned down there was, it was all geared toward college and career readiness type of thing. So if you want to think about defining the main problem, and anytime you talk about getting better, that's generally the first thing you think about is where are we now? Schools are largely still using a 20th century approach, and I think we all can agree progress has moved more quickly probably in the last 15 years than it did in the previous 50. I don't know if I have no research to back that, but it just seems like things are moving so quickly. And so now research shows that there's never been a bigger gap, despite the great job that our school systems are doing. There's never been a bigger gap between what our students learn in school and the skills that they actually will need when they get into the workforce. So what's happening to some degree is kids are doing well in high school, then they go to college and they have to do a whole different thing, and they're doing that well, and then they get a job and they've got to do a whole different set of things, but and they figure it out eventually, but we can do a better job of preparing them. Research shows we're in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution, and this one is kind of scary. It's all about cyber-physical systems, the internet, everything being wireless. We watched a video that showed a robotic arm making a wall in 90 minutes, a big wall in 90 minutes. And so it's about automation. And our schools, despite the fact that we're in the fourth industrial revolution, are still back in the second industrial revolution with Henry Ford. Okay, so that's not good. We've got a ways to go on that. And obviously change is needed. There's one thing I really want to emphasize. This is not just about having more technology in our schools. This is not a problem that can be solved by just saying, well, we're going to have 1,000 more laptops. It's about the way we do things as well. It's about having a culture of creativity and innovation, having computer science not as a course that our stronger students can choose to take, but as a course that all students have to take because it's a hugely burgeoning field. It's about the ability to locate and effectively use resources and the ability to work with others. And they say that these two things, locating and using resources and ability to work with others, are the two skills that companies are looking for more than any other when they hire young employees. This quote says, if you can write an algorithm for a task, the job is gone. That's a little strong. I mentioned the robotic arm building a wall. They used an example that FedEx had a business plan written that said in the next 8 years, they would have 500% more production and 50% fewer employees. Think about that. I don't know if it's true, or if it'll happen, but if that's the case, what is it gonna mean for our students? Just a quick look at the leading corporations in the world shows that, with the exception of Microsoft, it's all gone over to technology, companies that rely on the internet and wireless. And so what does it mean for our students? That's really the big thing. Well, it means to some degree they need to be designing and operating these emerging technologies. Okay? They need to be able to work effectively on a team that can create things, can figure things out, can work with one another without, they might annoy each other, but they have to get through it, and they have to learn to work as part of a team. They need technological literacy, including technological savvy. I sent a tweet out today to our students, many of whom follow me on Twitter, not in real life, and basically just to say, every single day I hear a story, not usually from Dudley-Charlton, but it's from somewhere, about a person who has lost their opportunities because of something that was found out about them or something they did on social media. You know, earlier today, Rebecca and I talked about a young man who was accepted to Harvard. Now, this has nothing to do with him, but in June of last year, 2017, June of this year, they accepted students for the graduating class of 2021. 10 of those kids were then unaccepted. I don't know if that's a word, but they were unaccepted because there was some things found out on social media that they had done, some poor behaviors. So that's as important to teach our kids as a lot of other things are. This is the neighborhood they hang out in now. So we have to figure that out. Oh,
Let's face it.
can you hear that?
Not what it used to be. Today's high
Is that loud
schoolers
enough?
are learning how to fly drones and 3D printing their artwork. It's really cool, but also kind of scary. So what crazy new technologies will replace number 2 pencils and good old graph paper in the classroom of the future? Virtual reality has been around since the 90s, but now Facebook and Google are no longer in your face. Google's Expeditions programs turn smartphones into virtual reality viewers using simple, inexpensive hardware. And now that Facebook's bought Oculus Rift, they're planning on getting into classroom gaming as early as next year. This is the first kind of headgear that might get you into the popular crowd. 3D printing in schools is revolutionizing the art of show and tell. These printers can make machine parts, jewelry, even guns. Yesterday's arts and crafts is now modern-day engineering. Elementary-aged children are already using 3D printing to design prosthetic hands. Remember how you had to lug around heavy books and then swap them out for other heavy books in your locker? Well, now there's the cloud, saving students from back problems everywhere. But the cloud could also give teachers direct access to data on students' study habits. By doing all their homework online, students provide engagement data on how long they spend on their assignments and whether or not they're taking notes. There's a bonus though. Major publishers could use that data to judge how effective and engaging certain textbooks are, so you could be recycling that boring algebra book. With biometric technology, we've got fingerprint scanning to borrow library books and iris scanning instead of ID cards. Teachers will even be able to tell if you're concentrating or not during online courses using eye tracking technology. Yikes. It's like old school projectors, but in 3D. Remember Michael Jackson's Back from the Dead moonwalk performance? Well, hologram technology in classrooms is still just a dream for now. It's too expensive. But in the future, it would allow teachers to give lessons to students across the world. Imagine taking a tour of a historic 3D model of the Colosseum right from your desk. The potential for new technology in the classroom is pretty amazing. But will it cause students who are plugged in all the time to forget what it's like to live in the real world?
So that's kind of scary stuff. That shows you the world that our students are going into. But I want to be very clear that we're not talking about all of a sudden Dudley-Charlton going from where we are today to all this, okay? Because number one, we couldn't, and number two, we shouldn't. There's a middle ground here, okay? Colleges are still requiring a lot of the same things as they did years ago. Our students still need to have a transcript. They need to have some of those traditional skills as well. So we're talking about finding a middle ground where we can do both things. We're not talking about a complete shift, but it is probably the biggest one we've ever made. And so, towards that, our next strategic plan. Change is happening so rapidly that it's impossible to keep up, but we do have a responsibility that we feel to be able to move it forward, and we need to adjust to a model that's more in line with some of the things I've already said and some of the things we saw in the video. One of those things is a little thing called project-based learning. And project-based learning is not going to be a fad, and it isn't the projects that we did when we were kids. It's a little bit different, and I'll let Mary take over here for this part of it.
Okay, so a lot of the conference sessions that I attended had to do with project-based learning. And it's a way that schools are looking at reaching all the different factions of students, not just the highest achievers, not the lowest achievers, but everybody can get involved in project-based learning. And a lot of schools are finding it very useful in even doing well on MCAS, because whatever projects they're working on has to be tied to the curriculum, but in a fun way, where the students have the joy of learning back in their lives. It's not just somebody talking at them all the time, they're actually doing, and as we all know, that the best way to learn is by doing. So one of the things that Wakefield was doing was teacher-led projects, where they would find a partner school either in another district, another state, and even in another country. They were working with Russia, as a matter of fact, and they would do projects identical in both locations, and they would communicate with each other via Skype, via telephone, via all different ways, and even they're exploring that holographic type of communication so that they can actually feel like the person's in the room with them when they're really not. And the kids are really excited about it, and even to the point where they're willing to stay after school later or come to school earlier because of the time zone differences that they would have to deal with. One of the projects that they talked about was setting a boat across the ocean and monitoring how long it was going to take to get from one location to the other, and the Russian students were doing the same thing, and it was an interesting experiment for them all to do, but the teachers were actually the leaders or the project leaders of each of those projects on both ends. So these projects can be combined with STEM, global awareness, expanding the learning outside the walls of the schools. You can learn anywhere. They're often comprised of two components. There's a research part, and then there's the doing part. So students need to learn how to do research. They need to know how to gather their facts and what are the good facts versus the not so good facts, and cull out the information that they need and synthesize that information. And then they need to put it to practice. Partnerships with outside organizations are taking place. NASA gets involved. National Academies of Science and Engineering is another organization where they actually have projects that they define for schools so that you can bring them into the school and set them into motion with the students. So you don't actually have to create them all from scratch. Assessment often looks less like a test and more like a presentation to the public. By that we mean that our students need to know how to go out into the real world and make a presentation. It's really hard to stand up in front of people and make a presentation. We all know that. If all you're doing is sitting in a classroom, you don't necessarily have a lot of opportunities to do that. Once they do these projects, they need to go out to various venues and present to a school committee, to parents, at fairs, whatever seems appropriate for that particular project.
Yeah, just click and then it should move forward.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. So there are challenges with this kind of an approach. Basically, you're building the plane while you're flying it. I really like this quote because that's basically what you're doing. Nobody really knows what they're doing. The total project isn't all defined, but you should have the opportunity to try it, and by failing, you're learning. So it's an opportunity to try things out. Educator discomfort. It is uncomfortable. It's new and different. We need to make sure that we have supports in place so that the teachers know that it's okay for them to fail too. This is a learning experience for everyone. Teachers learn from the students, students learn from the teachers. Issues with partner schools, curriculum, time zone, languages, what happens if you don't have somebody that can translate the language. These are all things that we have to get over as obstacles. Logistics, scheduling, teacher assignments, how do you schedule a project time? You need enough time so that you can actually delve into a project and put enough time into it. With our block scheduling, it's not exactly ideal for that. We would have to take a look at what that would really mean. Community and parent resistance. It's not the way we've always done it. It's not how we grew up. It's different. It needs to be different. So how do we show people that it needs to be different in the future for our kids? And ensuring content knowledge. They still need to know the academics. They still need to follow the curriculum while they're also having opportunities for this kind of learning. There are advantages. Engage students. Some of the students that we have difficulty reaching today could be engaged through this type of project-based learning. Enthusiasm for school. Kids that are involved in this type of thing like to come to school. It's something they look forward to doing. It sharpens skills needed for the future, lines up with the modern economy. It may reduce some stress on students. It's a little bit of a break in the mundane, in the old way of doing things, and it prepares them for college and career. Because in college and career, you're not sitting in one place all day. You have to figure out how to solve a problem, where you're going to find the information, how to work with teams of people. And it increases connection to community. Measuring success. Right now, we have several tools. We have the MCAS, common assessments, progress monitoring, traditional quizzes and tests, and other methods. But that's not the whole student. That's not what the whole student is all about. There are other ways to assess whether a student is being successful, and we all know that. What about the student's social or emotional development? Self-direction and resilience. Can they jump back up and start again if they fail? Can they try another approach? Can they be creative? These are all really important skills in the workforce. Our students' ability to set and monitor their own goals, discuss their learning, do their own project plans, develop and share products of their work publicly. Are they able to talk about what they've accomplished? It's great if you are able to do something really well, but if you can't market what you do very well and talk about what you've done and what you're able to present, it doesn't do anybody any good. No one's gonna know you're the best plumber in the world if you can't talk about it. These are behaviors and skills that colleges and careers are looking for. So basically, what we need to look at is, what do we value? What do we value in the profile in a graduate, in somebody that we would hire for any position, in somebody that is going to try to apply to a college? What would those colleges be looking for? What are the audiences looking for in our graduates? And it includes academic, personal, and interpersonal. In Wakefield Public Schools, they measure students in many ways: academic, social, emotional, interpersonal, how far they've improved. It's not necessarily you've done really well and you continue to do well. It could be that kid that was not doing well and now they've come so far. It's a growth model. And they have developed a rubric to try to measure those things because they're just as important as how well they did on the MCAS. Which brings us to social emotional learning, and I'll pass that over to Elaine.
We're gonna wing this, because I kind of want to go back on a couple of things. So I've been going to the school committee conference for 6 years, and every year we come back and we're excited about different things. But this conference, I honestly have to tell you, the level of excitement was huge, and it was followed by being terrified, because it really came down to having to think about things in a completely different way. So Mr. Desto touched on a lot that happened with our keynote speaker, Bill Daggett. And there was a little bit of a jaw-dropping for most people that were in the room, because when they were talking about the future and the careers and the things that students were going into, it's things that weren't even anything on my radar screen. So talking about the wall being built by a robot. So we're sitting down there as traditional public school people, but we have a lot of vocational people with us, and even vocational schools are going to be challenged by what the expectation is. And when you're sitting there and you're asking people to really think outside the box, and you're talking about putting students in an environment to learn a different way, teachers to learn a different way, there was a whole big conversation, a lot of the workshops that I went to that was based on social emotional health, mental health issues, a lot of things that are impacting our students today. So some of the information that we got to talking about is the real need for social emotional support for students. And some of the ways that we're looking at talking about this is using the format of project-based learning to assist and support students in building things like esteem, self-worth, feelings of success. There are a lot of students that might not be the student that is your high-performing student, your A student. But those students that have that sense of accomplishment, that feeling of being able to persevere and challenge through something that is difficult for them, and developing that inner resource of strength and perseverance, I think is great. Really looking at more of who the child is, not just as an academic performer, but who the child is as a person, what their contributions are to the community of school, to themselves, to their family. And I really kind of like this thought of success isn't based on having a great report card. Success is really based on who you are becoming, your best self. So there are those students, as Mary alluded to earlier with the success of project-based learning, is they might be that student that their best self is a C or a B, but we put them in an environment where they're gaining that inner recognition and confidence that they've achieved that level, their personal success. Looking at this curriculum becoming more student-focused, I know one of the workshops that I went to really talked about how students would be engaged in the course of the week of determining the goals for the curriculum for the week with the teacher. Not just the teacher determining what the outcome of the week would be, but the students turning around and saying, this is what we think that we want to target personally or as a class. Fostering collaboration versus competition, and I think that really follows the theme of project-based learning, and a lot of the opportunities that we heard and talked about was not just collaborating within your class, but collaborating across the school, collaborating across the district. And it's great for us because we do have parallels in two towns that run across, so we could be collaborating from the Dudley side to the Charlton side. High school could be collaborating with high schools in the local community or abroad. There was some really great, exciting things that we heard about related to that. But one of the things that was really, one of the statistics that really hit me in one of the workshops that I went to was the #1 mental health disorder is anxiety. And the #1 cause for students to go to the health center on a college campus is based on anxiety. And looking at trying to build inner resources for students to be able to deal with that, I think is really critical. So talking about what we can do as a district to kind of create an environment where we can help our students address stress while we're still celebrating their high performance. One of the workshops that I went to regarding the amount of mental health issues that were out there really focused on trauma and things that we don't typically think about or consider that students today deal with that weren't typical to the generation that I grew up in. The generation that I grew up in, it was unusual if there was a family in the community that was divorced. That was the big thing in my generation. But we're dealing with students right now talking about even just the opioid crisis and the statistics that we've had in the state of Massachusetts, the number of deaths related to an opioid crisis. That students today are witnessing things that we never conceived as possible. They're witnessing things related to drugs, to violence, to abuse, and they're seeing those things and they're coming into school and they still have to deal with being a student. And we're not in a position, we haven't yet been in a position to provide the type of support that we would really like to be able to provide for our students, and that's something that we have really focused on in our budget and our strategic plan, is trying to build those resources for our kids. There was some really powerful speakers that were there, and a young lady who who had dealt with the mental health element of being bipolar and going through school and speaking about the challenges. But those are things that are unique. They didn't exist in the time that I went to school, but they're probably more common than we really understand. So we're really talking about how we are addressing the stresses that we have in our kids' lives and turning around and talking about this perfection culture. And I know we've talked about it in the strategic plan about really developing resiliency. A lot of our students struggle with the fact that if they don't get an A, they don't consider themselves successful when they're not looking at the journey of improving their skills. Talking about homework, really what is the value of the homework? Is it really worth the cost of stress that students feel about doing that? We happen to be in a community that we have a tremendous amount of extracurricular activity for our students, and as we see with the show choir, and I know our drama, our student athletes commit a tremendous amount of hours to that element of their life, but they're still students with high demands and high expectations. Are we overemphasizing the high-level courses? Is it great to be pushing a student or a student pushing themselves to have a schedule that's only filled with the toughest courses? Talking about the amount and variability of the type of students that we're educating and how we do that with not having the breadth of variety that we would like to have. And then again, we've talked on many avenues here about the mental health issues, the issues that come in with society, family issues that we have. And as much as we're trying to do a great job supporting, we really have a great need for continuing to expand that. So I'm going to turn this back to Mr. Desto to wrap up the strategic plan.
Sure, thank you. Let me, before I summarize, that we've talked about the academic piece and the shift that has to take place there. I want to reiterate, we're not talking about completely reinventing the wheel, but it is probably the most radical shift that we've seen in the 18 years that I've been in the district, by necessity. And also personal and interpersonal skills. How do we measure those things? And I had a professor a long time ago who said, if you want your kids to remember something, then teach them it and then put it on the test. And so do we need to emphasize some of those other things? Does anybody have any questions? Because we've only got like one more thing, one more slide after this. It's really just a summary. If anybody has any questions, let me break it up and hear your voice if you want to ask anything at this point. You don't dare, right? Because I'll go on for 20 minutes. Well, I can't help it.
Mr. Desto,
Yes.
Can I say something, because I forgot, because it just came to my head, because it was on a slide. One of the things that came up was really talking about self-care, and not just for our students, but for our staff. Because a lot of what we're looking to do is we're going to be encouraging creativity, we're going to be encouraging experimentation and trying something that's not the norm. We're not changing the fact that we have to study English and math and history and all of those things, but we're really kind of changing the way we might be delivering it, and that puts people in an uncomfortable place. And teachers, have an expectation that they're an expert, and they might not be an expert in this particular scenario. And one of the things that was really stressed was, opportunities where we're teaching self-care, we're teaching mindfulness, that teachers are demonstrating how to be regulated, how to be calm, and how those things filter down to the students. So, sorry.
That's okay. It occurred to me earlier, what I should have said was this. Remember that young man who came to the meeting who had designed the dugouts?
Mm-hmm.
So that's exactly what we're looking for, but not to be all day long. To have that be one part of a child's day, that they're still doing some of the things that we've done. We're still emphasizing the whole child and a lot of the things that we've always held dear. But for at least as a starting point, part of their day, they are presented with a problem or a challenge, and they've got to creatively figure out a way to make it happen. Now, we're going to have it's going to look like Legoland out there. We're going to have structures everywhere. It's not going to be like that, but there's a variety of different kinds of things. But that was exactly the way this is supposed to work. There's a problem, we need dugouts. Here's a young man who likes to think that way. He went on in the computer room, he designed it, he made mistakes, he fixed them, he created them with a 3D printer, and now they're being built out on the baseball and softball fields. And that's what this is supposed to look like, absolutely. But again, it wouldn't be like that all day long. So just a quick summary. Our systems and structures as we are now only partially coincide with the needs of our students and their futures. So we need to make education more in line with reality and develop healthy, balanced, and well-educated young people. If I have had the last conversation in my office with an overwhelmed, stressed out student, I'll be a happy man. Okay, that's not likely to happen, but so toward the future, we are working on our strategic plan. It might comfort people to know that there are all types of people on that committee. It's not just me, it's not just school committee, it's not just principals, it's teachers, it's community members, it's other folks. All right, so we have a wide voice. Some of this is budget. It doesn't all require more money, but a lot of it does, and so it's a budget issue here. And of course, we're going to need to bring people together. That's school, that's town leadership, and that's also school staff, community, and children. So thank you for listening to us. I'm excited about this direction. It's certainly something that I'm excited about pursuing, and you'll be hearing a lot of these terms as the year goes along. Thanks.
Thank you. And we certainly got our money's worth out of the conference. Thank you so much.
Some of the things were just really mind-blowing that we heard that weren't in my thing. Tesla has designed a car that you will never have to have human hands touch it, other than to change the oil, the windshield wipers, and the tires. But everything will be, all of the repairs will be done virtually through computer systems. And then, you know, some of it's really exciting and some of it's terrifying. Because one of the things that they have is this little, like, you know, rice-sized chip that can go in your body, and it will constantly be moving through your body looking for health issues. And if it sees precancerous cells, it can blast them and destroy them. And if it's going through your arteries and it sees blockages, it can eliminate them. So to some degree, you can be moving along and be very healthy because you don't have internally building health problems. But then I was sitting next to Mr. Desto, and it's like, but then they'll always know where you are. And then they'll know whether, I mean, really know whether or not you're taking your medications and, you know, how you're eating. And, you know, there was kind of like a good side and a bad side. So it was exciting and it was kind of nerve-wracking at the same time.
Driverless buses, that makes me nervous.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
It was
I
very,
appreciate it.
a very nice presentation.
So maybe like
Really
a few months,
informative.
maybe towards, I don't know, maybe March or so, we update you again on the progress that we've made. And then by the end of the year, we hope that the school committee is approving a new strategic plan.
Yeah, good. It was a lot of fun to listen to. Thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda is consideration to hire academic intervention specialist. And Mr. Desto, you probably want to say
Yeah,
something.
just a paragraph, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Coin. So as indicated in the package that I sent out on Friday, I'm asking the committee for your consideration tonight to add an academic intervention teacher who would primarily, on a temporary basis, who would primarily be placed at Dudley Elementary School. But we would retain the flexibility to assign this person to the other elementary schools on an as-needed basis. So essentially, this person would work with children as assigned by the principal. There's always a need, and it grows every year, for someone to deliver an additional dose of instruction to children who may need extra time on a particular skill or concept. And this person would be able to do that. Additionally, as the need arises at the other elementary schools, he or she would be able to be assigned there as well. I also foresee this position being able to fill in for or support the regular classroom teachers when needed. It's really a flexible thing that I'm looking for and that our principal's looking for, and I would ask that this position be added for only the remainder of this year, this school year, not this calendar year.
I'll make a motion we have the position of academic intervention specialist for the remainder of the school year.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Who would make the determination when the specialist would move to what school? How would that,
It would be based
How do you
on,
envision it?
there would really have to be a need. What I envision, Mr. Pedrzak, is this person reporting to Dudley Elementary School. Principals speak among themselves very frequently, and if a need arises at one of the other schools, that there would be communication and that they would work it out that way.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll take a vote on it. All in favor? Opposed? Present. Okay. So, 6 in favor and 1 present, Elaine. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda, Director of Finance and Operations Report, Mr. Matthew.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of items for the committee this evening. First, going over donations received. The district has received an additional $2,820 for the John Pierre Memorial Fund, bringing the total to $21,909.87. And with the activities planned, I can see that number growing. So that is amazing.
Accept donation of $2,820 for the John Pierre Memorial Fund.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Additionally, the Charlton Middle School has received a donation of $500 for the purchase of basketball warm-up shirts.
I'll entertain a motion to
The
accept
donation
it.
of $500 for warm-up shirts for basketball.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you very much. The high school generator replacement, as the committee may remember from our last meeting, we did receive the bids for a replacement generator, slightly obviously brand new and all of that, but the expectation of expense certainly exceeded our anticipation, with a bid opening of $160,000 where the thought was it'd come in under $100,000. Having to go back to the drawing board, I think may have proved out to be beneficial to the district, because when we pushed our vendors, it does look like we can repair the current generator. The cost would be about $40,000. And really, the big question to consider here is, do we want to spend $40,000 for a 45-year-old piece of equipment? But I think, given the level of expense that a new one would cost us, as well as the level of uncertainty that we have with Shepherd Hill and where we're going with MSBA and certain things that may be redesigned, that's certainly one of the areas that would be, a focus of, renovations here. So it was a tough internal decision, but my recommendation to the committee is that we proceed with repairs
And
on the
I think,
generator.
really, we'll get our money's worth, because right now we're renting, right, and it's $6,000 a month. So if this lasted 1 year, 40,000 versus 72,000, right? 6,000 times 12. So it's worth our while to fix it for 40,000
Yeah.
and spend 6,000.
While there are no promises in this area, certainly, I do think that the expectation would be for longer than a year, as, so I think,
Didn't they,
that'll buy
guarantee?
us.
Did you say
No.
like 5 years?
There's no guarantee.
It was just verbally
They
said,
thought
but no,
maybe it
no
would-
guarantee, but
okay.
probably, a
It
minimum
would
of
last
5
like
years.
5 years.
But that's, words
You
are
never know.
words, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what it would do is create the bridge to at least the renovation project, in whatever form it takes ultimately.
How long does it take to fix it?
As I did not want to commit to the project until school committee had a chance to discuss and vet and obviously, or hopefully vote this evening. We'll get the parts ordered first thing in the AM. They know that, that this is the course of action, or this is a potential course of action for us. They'll respond as quickly as they can. There's unfortunately no guarantee that, it'll be over Christmas break or anything like that.
Did they say how long it takes? How long will it take?
It was, I believe, 7 days of
That's all.
of
So
repair work.
That's not bad. So it's no big deal if the kids are here that they're doing it?
Yeah, no, it's not going to affect whether or not there's school that particular day, because we've got the portable generator on the side.
So I'll make a motion that we repair the generator and motor together for a total approximately $40,000.
Second.
Discussion, any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that vote, we'll obviously reject the bid.
Do you need a motion on that?
It might not hurt to have that
Make
in
a
the
motion to
actual
reject the bids
minutes.
because we're replacing it with repairs.
We're repairing it.
Right.
Yes. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
Thank you very much. And just the last piece of business, the FY19 oil bid, the French River Education Center has completed the bid process for oil for the upcoming school year. The low bid, appropriately enough, was received from Santa Energy Corporation.
Good timing.
And there's 8 tiny reindeer at $2.0611 per gallon. It is up from $1.8390 per gallon. And obviously, we'll have to reflect that price increase inside of our budget as we go forward.
So do you want a motion to approve that
Please.
bid? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the bid.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Matthew.
Thank you.
Budget and Finance, oh, we did that, okay.
No, we're doing.
Oh, no, we did it. Budget and Finance Subcommittee report. And that is, the chair is Mrs. Reed.
Okay, so I only have a couple of things that we went over and discussed. One of the things that I was going to discuss was the generator, but we've got good news there. And we also discussed bringing up assigning 3 committee members to signing the warrants. You would still get the warrants every week, and if you had any questions, you would still be able to bring them forth. But instead of having everybody signing them at the meetings, the 3 committee members would come up here and sign them.
And that's on the odd week that we don't have a school committee
Right.
meeting. And we sort of have that already because I think,
I
right.
have
not been able to make it for
Well, we
quite some
set
time.
that up.
We set that up years
Right.
ago.
At the
and-
advice of our
But it-
auditors.
Right. So
trying to get-
Elaine, I'm sorry, Kathy and myself, and who
Me.
would want to be the third?
No, I don't like, and
I said that I could do it because I'm right down the road,
Okay,
so.
then we
that
have
would be
3.
fine.
Do you
So-
object?
No, one of the things that in the Morris training that Mrs. Antossi and I have been doing is that the warrants have to be signed in open meeting. They have to be signed at a public meeting, so it has to be something that's scheduled, and it has to be something that all 3 people are there at the same time doing the warrants, so that the public has an opportunity to come in, so it has to be something that's posted.
Is
So
that a
was-
law? Is that a law or just a
that-
suggestion?
Yes, no, that was
That's a
part
law.
of, that's a law. That was part of the training piece that was new information to us.
Because,
So I have no problem with us having a committee. I think we need to investigate how it's being done. So what many other school committees do is that the people that sign the warrant come to the school committee meeting 15 or 20 minutes beforehand. It's posted that warrants would be being signed at between 6:45 and 7. The meeting starts at 7, and then it's done that way.
but how about the off week?
That would be something that you would have to make a choice and say that, we're signing warrants on the off week, whatever day and whatever time, in a time period, so that if there were, on the off chance there would be somebody from the public that was interested in a particular warrant, they
Right.
would have an opportunity to go in and do that.
Because probably they've changed, because when we had that subcommittee, the law was that you needed 3 signatures, and that's why we had the little subcommittee.
Right.
But we always signed it all together at our meeting.
Mhm.
So we'll have to figure something out. So what's your suggestion, Mr. Matthew?
Let me take a look at the laws as they relate to this, and I can report back to the
Okay.
committee at the next meeting.
We also discussed possible numbers for what we would be bringing forth to the communities for an override number. I don't know if you wanted to discuss what the numbers were. If you wanted to do that, that would be
Yeah.
great.
I'm glad to.
Okay. And then the last big sort of, was that we discussed the A&D, but we did not have a final number yet, which we won't have. But with that, we had discussed possibility of buying a new school bus with it. So, but that's not gonna be for, so the number is, when is the number final, February?
The hope is that we'll have it certified by the end of January.
Yeah, so, but that's all I have.
Okay, any questions for Stephanie? All right, Mr. Desto, do you want to add?
Sure. I mean, the biggest part of the meeting was obviously to discuss the override, and what we included in your packet was Mr. Matthews' creatively titled Operational Override Overview. I guess that's the OO document, the triple O, O cubed. Basically, there's so much information, and there's so much that we have already been discussing and need to continue to discuss, that I'm going to try as best I can to, maybe for my own sake, as well as anybody else's, to narrow it down to what I believe are the 4 things that we really need to focus on. And they don't all have to be solved tonight, by the way. The first thing is, well, in the document, how many years do we want this to sustain our budget? Anywhere between, 1 and 5, I suppose. And in the document, we included a 3-year time frame. What do we want to include in this override? Essentially is a question of, do we want to go to the people and ask for a number that simply enables us not to make any cuts? Or do we want to go for a number that enables us to make some growth, a lot of growth, whatever, those questions have to be answered. How do we want to structure the actual question? And basically what I'm thinking about here is two possibilities, one being that we look at having all 3 years included in the first year ballot, the 1 year ballot question, so that it's all up front and sustains the district over 3 years, or however many the committee decides to present to the selectmen. And the other scenario would be if we needed to, after discussing with the towns, present a smaller number. I don't particularly like this, I'll be real honest with you up front, but to go with a smaller number this year just to sustain, and then do the same thing next year, and the same thing, so 3 consecutive years, we go back. And I don't like that, but I'm only one. And then finally, and I would like to try to determine this tonight, is the timeline for the override. And Mr. Matthew and I have presented our recommendation to the committee. So I will defer to the committee as to how you want to proceed on this. I know it's a lot to take in. I know there's a lot of moving parts. Whatever you want to discuss first, we will. If it makes sense for Mr. Matthew to take a quick walk through the numbers to see how they were determined and so forth, we can do that. If you want to discuss timeline first, I will defer to the committee's wishes on that.
Well, you can walk through the figures. Why don't you go through the FY19 figures first? The spreadsheet.
So even though the FY19 budget is within the forward look on the calendar, there still are a lot of unknowns. Very specifically, we have a transportation contract that ends at the end of fiscal 18. And given the timing of our health insurance plan, we'll have the first pass of the rate increase in February. So trying to take or to come up with a final FY19 number at this point is not possible without using some level of projections. We do have contracts in place for FY19, so doing the salary schedule changes is fairly straightforward. The health insurance, I've put in at about a 7% increase. The recommendation from our advisors was to start with an 8% increase, knowing that, that generally will come down. So again, trying to, rather than presenting option A, option B, option C under scenario A, scenario B, and scenario C, just choosing a number for now to work with. There's an anticipation that the Worcester Regional retirement assessment is going to continue to go up at the rate it's gone up, and so we've included that. The transportation contract, again, is really a big question mark. In some communities, it's gone up as much as 10% plus. We may get lucky and have that as a lower number. I've included a 7.5% increase for right now, but again, subject to change. As discussed previously for FY19 fuel oil, we can expect a level of utility expense increase. And we have the lease to pay for, for the upcoming next 3 years at about $100,000 for IT. So those are the fixed expenses, and those fixed expenses basically carry through FY19, FY20, and FY21. And when you take those numbers with the unknowns that are present there, they come out to a 3 to 4% increase level. So those are big numbers. The totals that you can see there are $1.9 million. That would be a very good budget year for us if we were able to do that. It would hopefully, if some of the projections came in less, allow us to do some of the things that we have under the growth expenses. The growth expenses all came as recommendations from the building principals and the district directors. And I think, I'll defer to Mr. Desto here, but I think match up very closely with our strategic plan.
Yeah, and I had some input into this as well. And so basically, The difference in the three scenarios is essentially how much growth we get as a district. And what that means is largely new positions, okay? This is before we ever take a look at whether or not we have favorable class sizes in a particular grade, and maybe one of these positions comes from there. We haven't done that yet, because we don't really know yet. But 391,000 are the building expenses that were requested by the principals. That is learning stuff among the 7 schools. Now, positions that are included in this projection are librarians and restoring the librarians that were cut for this year, and a custodian that was cut this year. 2 technology integration teachers, one on each side of the district for elementary. 2 foreign language teachers, 1 at each middle school to further our global goals. Emotional and social emotional support personnel, 1 on each side of the district at the elementary level, and 1 at Shepherd Hill, so that's 3 altogether. A technology teacher, and I said technology, but I'm thinking more along the lines of computer science at Shepherd Hill. And then, of course, health insurance, if we were to get those new staff members. That's the big one. That's all of it, okay? So the middle column then keeps a little bit of that, and then the far column keeps none of that. It's just the fixed costs from the above. All right, and that's essentially the difference between the 3.
So as you go through the document, you can see FY20 and FY21 keeping the same scenarios of A, B, and C with the varying percentage increase in FY19, but with a fixed 3% increase for fiscal 20 and fiscal 21. Obviously, for fiscal 20 and 21, there are even more unknowns, and the largest component there are the personnel contracts, which go through the end of fiscal 19. So putting this together is challenging, because when you're doing budgeting, it's great to work with knowns and with definitive numbers, and so much of this is unknown at this point in time. And again, especially the large numbers that drive the budget increases. So I think really one of the big questions is going to come down to, how much of that new growth or growth expenses do we look to fold into, what we're looking to do here.
So as far as the actual number itself, that's the most overwhelming part of this. That's whoa, okay. Very, very large numbers, even just to meet fixed, just to basically sustain over the course of 3 years, you're looking at $4 million, that's split between the 2 towns. But one thing that I would like to think about tonight is the timeline, all right, because I think we really need to start thinking about these milestone dates. At least I do, because it helps me to plan. So on the back where it says potential timeline, I have by February 14th, which is as of right now, we would plan to have a school committee. That's the second Wednesday of the month. That would have been the deadline for the school committee to approve the ballot question language that we will request from the boards of selectmen. Now, I want to at least, I'm not sure what, and I see that Mrs. Craver is here, and I apologize we've made you wait this long, and you you have no obligations here tonight, by the way, and we thank you for coming. But do you happen to know what the selectmen meetings will be that month of February? Because we're wondering if we need to move our meeting, if we need to consider, or I need to ask the school committee to consider moving the meeting up that month so that we would be able to have the committee approve it, and then have enough time for both towns to have their selectmen meetings.
I'm talking about February. The 13th and the 27th of February.
Okay. All right, so, well, if we kept it as it is and meet the 14th, then we do have, and I don't know Dudley's schedule, but I'm assuming it's they're gonna probably have a meeting in the 2 weeks one of the 2 weeks that follow our meeting.
They
So
have their meeting every week, every Monday.
every other like we do.
Is it every other?
Every other, isn't it every other? It is the first and third and second and fourth.
Dudley's usually the first Monday of the month, so the 5th and 19th likely.
Okay,
The 19th is a holiday, isn't it?
Yes.
Washington.
yeah.
Is it every other
It's every
Monday?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
I'm wondering if
Can
just,
we do
to-
it in January instead, the last
well,
meeting in
certainly,
January?
we could shoot for
Or
that,
do it
yeah.
all- I
Yeah.
would suggest aiming for the January, what, 20-something?
It's the 24th.
Wouldn't that make more sense than worrying about?
Sure, we'll
Right.
try. And then we would have, we could, request that of the selectmen, and then one of their meetings in February, they would be able to, eventually give their approval for us to go forward.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Interrupt you, Mr. Justo,
No
but
problem.
Are we waiting for the governor's budget to come out to get a better idea? Because that's not released until the last Wednesday of January.
I know, that's a great point, and primarily the reason that we wanted to wait this long to nail it down is that it's not only that we'll have some information from the governor, it's also that Mr. Matthew could explain better, but we expect to have some information also about a few other things, health insurance, at least a stronger estimate.
Right, a legitimate first pass estimate of what we might look at for rate increases, as well as the transportation contract. And just a quick note on that, tomorrow there's a meeting with the Central Mass Regional Planning Committee of looking at maybe doing a joint procurement with a number of communities. So it's one option, but where this is kind of the first meeting, and I'm not sure of what the timeline's gonna look like there. So our transportation bid is in the hopper and kind of ready to hit the streets. But we wanna make sure that it's advertised for an appropriate amount of time so that we can, make sure to maximize that opportunity.
Would we be best considering moving our meeting up a week in doing our first February meeting on the 7th? So it allows time for the governor's budget to come in, to do some calculations, to look at things, if you're looking for that February language. Because I think if we move it into January, we're looking at a shot in the dark. We'll have no really
Right.
firmer clue of what we're doing.
Will February 7th be enough time for the transportation and the health insurance? To have at least a clue? a better clue?
I think we can certainly push the health insurance to make sure that that's the date, by the 6th that I've got the information so I can, put it into the program. And I think transportation, I'll have a much better idea after tomorrow, based on what that meeting brings, or maybe doesn't present as an opportunity for this round with us.
Well, so I don't know what the committee wants to do. I guess January 24th would be too soon then, yeah.
Could we do just a special meeting? I don't know. It gets very busy when we start
It
getting
sure
into
does,
budget
yeah.
season. If we were to just do a special meeting about the budget, to take that one topic, to allow the towns to do their thing, and then do an abbreviated schedule, I'm looking at the logic of trying to you're asking us a question that the information is no different than if we were to make the decision tonight.
That's pretty true.
Robin has a question.
I'm
Robin?
not sure if, I think I had sent you some information from the town clerk as to how many days.
Yeah, 35 days.
35, I just pulled up her email just to double check and make sure it's 35. But as I'm reading it, and if I can just read this to you, she says, she needs the signed question in her hand by 5 PM 35 days before the election. Keeping in mind the holiday and day closures at companies, she needs to order the ballots and programming cards also. So she would say that realistically, she should have that question and date about 50 days before. So she's on vacation, a week in December, but I don't think that should be an issue. And the town hall's not open, until the 2nd. So she'll be back. So she's recommending that she should not receive it any later than the 12th of February. So she should have that vote in her hand to order the ballots by February 12th.
If we're gonna do the special election in March, late March, or whatever it is. Okay.
And the Charlton Selectmen meet on the 13th, did you say?
Go back to that one.
She had the 13th and the 27th.
13th. So, which backs it up then you're probably gonna want into them by the end of January the 30th.
Well, we'll have the governor by then, but,
Or would 49 days?
She's saying the 12th. If you make your decision ahead of time, the 6th, which is their off night, we could have a conversation about having a special meeting for that.
Okay.
Where you could come and actually explain what you want to do, and that would not be a bad idea. So you could actually, for Charlton anyway, maybe aim for the 6th, an off meeting night.
okay.
Do you think it's more feasible to push the date of the election back? Because it seems like we're rushing all this stuff together. There's too
Right.
much going on. I think we should,
I
why
think
did you pick the end of March, April? That's not set in stone. Was there a reason for that?
No, it's
I
not
would-
set in
I would
stone.
say we should not rush through this, and we should push the date further to April or something.
We don't want to be too close to the town meeting, but but there's no, I'm not aware of any restrictions regarding when a special election is in relation to a town meeting. I'm not aware of anything. So, yeah, we could move it into,
Yeah, because
as
this
far
is
as
hard,
like,
everyone.
we want to, as far as mid-April would, even work if we had to, as long as we stayed away from vacation.
Right.
I'd support that.
I would say we
Yeah.
should,
Yeah,
but
I
this
would
is too
too.
much problems here.
And if that's the case, then we can stick to the original plan of waiting for the information to come in from the governor, health insurance,
No,
and,
It makes no sense doing it without that information.
Yeah.
okay. So that puts us back in our February 14th meeting.
Right,
Okay.
keep everything the same then, except the ending date.
And just as an idea, if we were to look to hold the election on April 10th, that provides us 54 days between April 14th and April 10th.
You mean February 14th?
February
But
14th, yes.
But that's not the date we're going from. We're going from the date that the selectmen approve it.
Right.
So it'd have to be 35 days that count from then. And I think we're still okay. They meet on the 26th in Dudley and the 27th in Charlton.
Are you targeting a specific day of the week to do the ballot on? Typically in our town, the election is voting is on Saturdays, but in Dudley, it's on Mondays. So do we turn around and we're going to do that vote on the same day in both towns?
I think you have to.
I think you have to.
Yeah.
don't you?
A special
Right.
election, I think
So-
you do, yeah.
I don't know if there's,
Yeah.
If-
it's a consideration to what
It
day of
is
the week you're gonna.
something to discuss, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. So everybody's okay with that timeline then?
Yeah.
We see we wait for the more definitive information to come in. And the 14th, this group here is hoping to approve all these variables that will go into the question. Then we present that to the selectmen, who in late February hopefully will approve that. And then we'll have we'll decide on a date for the special election after that. Okay?
Does it have to be the same day?
Well, it's two independent votes
That's what I
in
mean,
in
it's not
two
a
independent
district vote.
towns, so I'm not sure that it needs to be the same day. There may be wisdom in having it the same day
There's
for,
wisdom in
for,
Yeah, because if one town
you
does
know,
and the other one say, well, I'm not going to, or vice versa.
Exactly, but this is not a debt exclusion vote
Right.
where the
Yeah.
district
It
is
has to
is
be.
carrying,
It'll have
is
to
handling
be,
this.
yeah.
It's in two individual towns.
That probably isn't, like with the debt exclusion.
Yeah, that has to be the same.
Right.
Okay. Do we want to discuss the numbers a little bit? I think it would be good to at least have a preliminary discussion about, everybody understand them first of all, I guess.
So under the growth expenses, these are all of the personnel that you've identified as possibilities or what we would need for the district for growth. I would add an additional one, I think we really seriously need to be looking at an assistant superintendent.
So let me take the first part of your question, and then I'll probably summarily avoid the second part. But the first part is that, yes, this is what we were looking at as far as growth, but it didn't, we're not including yet that we always do a thorough review of everything every year to see if there are positions that should be, repurposed, for lack of a better term, whether we have class sizes that are favorable in one place and we can move that person to somewhere else where we've had a need, So it could be that there'll be, in our strategic plan, we'll be satisfying those goals in another way, but this is the new stuff, financially. As far as an assistant superintendent, that's a discussion that the school committee will need to have. I will say that at some point in the long-term future of this district, with 4,000 students and 500 employees, at some point, it's going to have to be, let me rephrase that. At some point, something more is going to have to be done. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be in the form exactly of an assistant superintendent, but that's a discussion that I will leave to the committee.
Well, it is a big discussion, and I realize that a salary for an assistant superintendent would put an impact here, but I think we need to take a look at it because the district is very large, and there are so many things that you are addressing on a daily basis that takes you away from the strategy of the district, and we need you there. So there needs to be somebody in between there that is able to address some of the smaller issues, well, not so small issues, so that you can address the more strategic view. And I think we need to talk about that. I don't know where the right place is to talk about that, but I think it needs to be in the numbers.
I've spoken on this issue on several occasions, and one of them is that I think that we are very stretched in our central office staff. We have a tremendous amount of challenges that in the normal day-to-day operation between Mr. Desto and Mr. Matthew, we are not in a position to explore other ways to help the district grow because there's just not manpower available to do that. When you start looking at creative opportunities, the networking that needs to be done to find those opportunities for funding and resources that aren't in the normal pipeline, that's what we need to do, and you just don't have an ability to do that. And I do think it might not be the appropriate time tonight. I know I've spoken about it in Budget and Finance and feel very strongly that we need to do this for the health of the district moving forward. So I think if I were to just say anything, I think that this is, conceptually in a direction that we need to go. I've tried to think about it quite a bit since Budget and Finance meeting as to the direction to go. And to be quite honest with you, I don't have a definitive answer. Because we sat and we talked about this. The number is big, and we know the number is not palatable for the towns, but it is what we need. And we've been tasked in the joint financial meeting. We were tasked with two things, which is tell us what you need, okay, and we don't want you coming back. And they're not compatible things.
No.
So the number that we need is huge, but we can't pass an override with that number and not come back for 3, 4, 5 years. So I struggle with, I'm trying to find a way to move forward that we can be successful.
We have to be successful and come up with a realistic number. We can't have it so big that it's not going to pass, and then we're going to end up with nothing.
Well,
We've got to, that bottom line has got to be something that's going our citizens are going to vote for.
So one of the things that we talked about at Budget and Finance was not going for one override, but going for numbers that would be manageable to do on a yearly basis and try and build slowly to what the needs are. And I know we heard multiple times, we don't want you coming back, but the only way we can do this is to move people slowly so that they can appropriate versus putting a number that we know we're gonna get shot in the foot right out from the gate. There isn't anything on here that can't be supported as to the reason why it's being asked for. So I don't have an answer. I would really love to hear if other people feel that one way or the other is the better way to go. If anybody else has an opinion, I really struggle. This is kind of like a two-headed monster. Neither one of them are appealing.
Well, I spoke in that budget meeting that a figure that was bandied about was like almost 5 million. I can justify the budget, I've said it before, it's not the budget, it's the revenue supply. I cannot justify a $5 million override, which would lead to a 25% increase in the Dudley tax rate. I couldn't support that. And by not supporting, asking for 5 million, if the committee as a whole, the majority, I don't think we'll get anything. I would rather take it slowly the first year, and if it's successful, maybe the next year, maybe skip a year. But to go for 5 million with a 25% tax rate in Dudley I couldn't support it.
That's not realistic.
I couldn't, and then I don't think it would ever pass, and then we'll get nothing.
Give people some idea of what that means. And speaking with Mr. Valiakonis, who couldn't make it tonight because he had another engagement, the average tax bill in Dudley is approximately close to $3,000. We'll use the round number of $3,000. So it'd be over $700 more, and that's an awfully lot of money. One of the tough things that I'm running into is that you look at this room right here, and I see all people that are big gung-ho supporters of education, and they're like, yeah, it's so obvious to us that we need this stuff. We want to be great, right? We want to be the best. We don't just want to be the little engine that could. We want to be awesome because our kids deserve that. And those are the kind of people that I find I'm around a lot during the day, and when I run into parents and so forth, and I ask them, hey, conceptually, would you prefer for a district to say, this is what we need to have to be truly preparing our kids for college and careers, or would you rather us say, this is what we think people will vote for? And they always say the same thing, well, go for it. But then we know, but there's this whole other bunch of people
Right.
who are really proud and supportive of our district, but who aren't here every day and who maybe don't have children in the district, but they really do have pride in it. But those are the people that are in the middle, and I don't run into them enough to know which way they would prefer to have it. And certainly there's a whole nother group that we really won't even talk about that are not gonna be supportive no matter what we do. So it's the not knowing what those other people would think that makes it very challenging for us to decide what the right way to go is. I mean, that's what I'm running into anyway. Crickets.
I have a question on the figures. On the bottom here, it's on FY '19. It says FY '19 requested revenue increase of 2 million. What would that be used for if all the other increases are under the 3 million? What would that represent? Do you see what I'm talking about?
I'm sorry, say that again?
See the two lines down here? One says requested revenue increase of 2 million. What would that be used for? Because all the other things that are going up are including the 3 million. So what would that 2.8 be?
That's what a 5.95% budget increase to our revenue would look like.
The 2.8 would be how much money we would get if we were successful getting an override for that amount. The 3,000 is how much our
The 3 million,
expenses are.
so-
3 million, sorry.
See, the way it's written here, sounds like you need 2.8 million for something, and then you know another 3 million for this. Does everyone see what I'm saying? Do you
I see
how
what
that
you're
I think it's
saying.
misleading,
Yeah.
because it looks like, what's that 2 million for? If the 3 million's gonna take all the new expenses, what's the 2.8 million for? So you're saying, if we get a 5.9% increase, that would equal 2.8 million, and it'd still be
Because our
167.
We have a
Right.
debt.
And the
Right,
expenses
right,
are
but that
3
doesn't read
million.
that way to me. You understand? Do you see the confusion? It looks
No,
like you're.
I see those numbers, how they work, but
But I
What we're
think that's
saying is-
misleading, I understand, but that's expecting to get a 5.9% increase.
Well, right, that's what that column was
Right,
calling
yeah.
for, right.
But it looks like it's,
If we were to get the 5.9, we could afford being a little bit short.
right, well,
All these things
right.
we've asked for.
So that's saying you'll be looking for a $2.8 million override.
And that-
That's basically.
For
what
that
it
Under
says.
that scenario,
But
yes.
yeah,
For
so
that
that's
year.
why
For that
I
year.
think if you're showing this to the public, that should be written differently. Because you see how it's confusing?
Oh, yeah, well, for the
Yeah,
public,
it's like,
certainly,
yeah.
yes.
It looks like you're asking for 2 million, then another 3 million.
If we, right, if we did the override for 3 years up front all at once, that's only for the first year.
Right. But a 2,800,000 override would solve all the problems for the first year, basically.
It would enable us to do the things we want to do, yes. But
little
of
bit
course,
short.
of course, then the next year, we would not be able to sustain it if we didn't get another override.
Well, that 2 million carries forward to
Carries
next year, so it take care of all the expenses from the previous year.
But there still needs to be
Right, There'll be
an
increase,
additional.
there'll be, yeah,
Yeah.
there'll
Yeah,
be
the fixed
expenses.
increases
Fixed
are
will go up,
gonna be
but-
there.
But all the staff will be paid for
Yeah,
forever,
right,
basically.
yeah.
So I think, my feeling is a 2.8 is pretty, a lot to ask for, but it's not as bad as 5 million. That's my feeling.
Rich, can you explain how that works about with the 2.8 for 1 year, then the following year, where do
It's
we fall
built in.
short?
Well, the fixed expenses are gonna recur each and every year. Right now, in the, revenue scenarios that we had worked on with Mark Abrams and the analysis, the district is only expecting roughly $100,000 a year revenue increase from the state. So unless we create our own revenue stream, and we've had those conversations, over the course of the last couple of years, any budget increases that we can hope to get for are gonna have to come from the two towns. And that's, the big component in these numbers. Yes, we can always, keep whittling down to, support our fixed expenses, as the district has done. The last couple of years, we've been pretty fortunate, even though we haven't gotten all those things that we've wanted to get. We haven't had to make substantial cuts because our budget increases have been okay, not perfect, and we have had to make some reductions. But, going forward, though, that level of expense, that level of fixed expense doesn't change. Again, knowing that there are variables such as the personnel contracts and, health insurance, in any given year, we may get lucky and have a 0, 1, or 2% increase in health insurance. Conversely, we might need to have a 12% increase in a given year because we had a bad, because it looks like we're having currently a bad year.
Now, scenario C, I like that number better. And what does that give us?
Nothing.
I don't think just the fixed cost.
Just the
This is-
fixed cost.
This is all blank.
Right. It would
No
be,
new staff,
Okay, and there would be no new growth?
Nothing.
no.
And most likely, we're gonna have to reallocate and cut.
A little bit, yeah. I think,
Well, you had said
Yeah.
maybe that would stay without cuts.
maybe the first year, yes. I don't-
But no new staff.
Right.
There'll be no new staff.
So,
No,
so,
no staff.
so as it's been for the past several years, any forward progress that we make is gonna have to be like in the repurposing of positions that we train somebody to do something new, or cut here to add there, or whatever. It's kinda like same old, same old.
Yeah.
A lot of the people that are very active and supportive of our schools are not like attracted to that. They wanna see some forward progress, and, they should, but we've got some limitations too.
Offhand, if it was let's just say the first scenario A, if it was 2.8 million, what's the breakdown in Dudley-Charlton? How would it break down approximately? I do have that someplace here. Oh, it's right here on the last page, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be roughly, Dudley would be about $5,000 more in terms of their assessment increase for FY19 than Charlton. So roughly 1.4 million, 1.42 million for Dudley and 1.415 for Dudley.
So it's the first figure on this page.
Close to 50.
It's almost a 50-50 split.
I'm gonna get into all these too. So,
What would that do to the tax rate? Do you know that offhand?
At least in Dudley, that would be
But
If you go.
around a 14% increase.
14%.
So that's probably in the realm of
that's what you're getting.
high $300, $375, something like that.
You know, one of the things we haven't
Scenario
talked
B.
about
If it
either
doesn't
is
pass.
that, you know, over the past few years, the unfunded mandates that have come our way have increased, it seems. And we've got to sort of figure that that's going to happen over the next 3 years too. So, you know, if we look at column B or column C, we're not growing anything. It's going to actually cost us more. And these numbers will be irrelevant at that point in time anyways.
Now, if we go too high and the override doesn't pass, then we have $0. If they say no. So we have to decide whether we're gonna go for A, B, or C.
I think there's a philosophical question too about, you know, our natural inclination is to say, that number's huge, so it can't happen. This one's smaller, so maybe. But I wonder, and I think we gotta reach out and find these things out. Are there a lot of people who would rather pay more to have a real shot at just being, you know, having the very, very best for the children, as opposed to just enough? You know what I'm saying? Like, are they, if you lay it side by side and say, here's what we are now, and we're, by the way, we're pretty good. I don't mean for any of this to imply that we're not. But here's where we really know that we need to be, because we need to have our kids be college and career ready. There might be a lot of people who are willing to stretch more because they want the best. And I wonder if there would be some people in that category who would say no to this just because it would be like, that's kind of like what we do all the time anyway, is we just kind of make it work. So philosophically, I wonder if we can gain more support by clearly stating what we would do if we had more money. It's just something for conversation.
The support might be there, but when push comes to shove, people don't have that kind of money to increase.
And that ballot box is very private.
So they can say what they want to your face, but when it comes to the fact, almost $1,000 increase on someone's house in property tax is a lot of money
It is.
for a family to afford.
I know that we discussed in the sub-finance committee meeting about bringing forth the lower, which would be the 2.8, and then the next year asking for another, and then coming back for a third year. I think the 2.8, in my opinion, is the lowest that we can go. And we also discussed that it might not pass, but then we'd have to go back to the drawing board and bring back another number. It's not going to, unfortunately, an override isn't going to be on everybody's wish list, but it's something that the school will need. And 2.8, I believe, is the lowest that we can go to make a difference that first year. I mean, 5 million, yes, would be perfect for everything that we need for the next 3 to 5 years. But I don't think that we can lower what we're gonna go for the first override.
I think one of the things that we have, the hope is that we're going to go for an override and it's gonna pass. And I think, to be realistic, to look at what it is that we need, we have towns with, you know, two different scenarios. Dudley is facing huge increases in their MLC, so an override is necessary in Dudley in order for them to be able to sustain town government, to address their required contribution. So we could be in a scenario that Dudley passes because they need to survive, and Charlton has an opportunity to be a little bit more selective about whether or not they are supporting an override designed for education. I think there's a lot of moving parts, and I think that that's what we need to consider is to put forth what it is that we need, defend it, and let people choose, and then based on what their action is, then we turn around and respond to it. I think it's something to consider. We've historically had a culture of being conservative and doing without, and we've done that for so long. Now the level of need that we have is very, very great, to restore and to put ourselves in a position to grow. So I don't think it's unrealistic to have that conversation and then respond to how the communities have voted on it, and then act accordingly. As I said earlier, we've been asked to do something that tries to serve two masters, and it can't. We're trying to put out in the community what it is that we need. I still think, and we've discussed this in the budget, that this is still conservative. This is still cautious. This is not extraordinary, and it's not, it's not putting things in that aren't, to some degree, an expansion of what is required. There isn't fluff in here. There's so many things that I'm sure the principals didn't even bring up that they'd love to see. It's a question of, do we ask for it, or do we stage it and we prioritize and we build slowly? But we went through so many years of not asking for anything at all. Now we're in a situation that we have to have a big conversation, and it's a democracy. We put it out there, we respond to how the community responds. We're never going to change people that don't want their tax bill to change, and I respect the fact that there are people out there that can't afford the increase. So do we look at, this is what the number is, do we do it slowly so people can build the economy? Everything that you hear about, even the financial news that was pasted on news today, is that things are improving. Things continue to improve, then maybe each year people have an ability to spend an extra $50 or an extra $100, and we do it slowly. But we have to let people know what it is. We've done a disservice by not letting people know. Let's let them know what it is, and let's find out how they want us to proceed.
Mrs. LaCourte, if I may, may I ask, Mrs. Craver, do you have, I know you cannot speak for the Board of Selectmen, I totally get that. Do you have any sense of, I know one thing that when we did our subcommittee joint meeting that I heard loudly and clearly, excuse me, Mrs. LaPlaca, was that, coming back multiple years was not an attractive thing for them. There was they sort of seemed like they would have preferred for us to just say, here's what you need for the next 3 to 5 years, go for it all at once, and ba-boom. But that number just seems so far off. Do you have any sense of where they might, because we need their support to do this. I mean, all these questions we're asking, we ultimately have to ask them as well.
From the joint meetings, what I remember was that the conversation seemed to be favorable towards coming in with a multi-year, one-time override, which asked for this year, and this year, all at once, so that you kind of had the best of both worlds, so to speak. That you ended up with saying it's not this great big one year, but based over 3 years, it's to get you there. So I think it does address what Mrs. Bowell is talking about, is just trying to do it strategically. So I think that's what I heard the finance committee talking about.
And the number we looked at that night was the $5 million number, and it's just overwhelming. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, if I may, so I think the benefit, it's interesting, because when we originally started this discussion, I was sort of against the coming back in succession, whether it's in successive years or not, versus just doing it all at once as part of a package. I'm really sort of leaning toward coming back again in smaller increments, because I think it gives us more time. You know, when we talk about terms like growth, and we throw that term out to the public, that's not expansion, folks. And I think sometimes that gets misconstrued. You know, and I think it gives us time to further educate. And I think I had mentioned one time about successful overrides in certain towns and areas, and one of the things they did really well was they developed that frequently asked question list. And some of the questions were as basic as, your budget is already $50 million plus, what do you need more for? Basic questions that somebody might ask in their kitchen. You know, why do they need more? And really solid answers to those questions. And I think that the staggered approach, I don't know what else to call it at this point, but might be more advantageous. It's just my thought.
I was like that at first. I thought 1 year and that's it, get it all. But it's a $5 million figure. That changed my mind completely, because I never thought it would be that high. Should have known better, but I didn't think of 5 million.
You were thinking it was
About
together.
2, yeah, I thought it was about 2 million. 3 million maybe max.
Isn't there a risk, though, that, you know, if you do 1 year, and then, you know, we're able to show some growth, and then the next year we fail, that we end up having to reduce again? Isn't there a real chance that a real threat that could happen?
Well, it's not an unlikely threat, but on the same token, you could find if the economy is continuing to build and circumstances are getting better, that's something that you're tying into. You're tying into unemployment rate. You know, the financial news that we heard today was based on what's happening and better investment. There is a void in the type of employees that people are looking for, which means they're going to have to pay higher salaries to get better people to retain employees. So you can't base this on one factor. There's so many things that come into play. You know, as real estate values are starting to recover from the downturn, that has an impact. So someone's, you know, the value of someone's properties and assessments can turn around and improve things. I mean, we have been in a situation where we have had really good low unemployment in the state of Massachusetts. There's so much that's happening locally with expansion, opportunity, new things. You see it when you drive into Worcester. You look at all the industry that's coming in, the biotech industry that's exploding. You have all of these other things that are coming in. People are going to be looking for communities to move to, people that are looking to downsize, retire, sell out, new families coming in. There's so many factors to it. It's not just one thing. So to Mr. Petruzak's point, the point of staggering it is we're making slower growth. We're trying to, you know, work with families to plan accordingly. As we said this, it's you know, plan an extra $25 a month for the next 3 years. We're going to just keep working on moving towards bringing the rate up. We've had so many conversations. We started this whole process at an extremely low tax rate, and where we are now is on a very low end of it. So there has to be some rebalancing someplace. Obviously it's not palatable to go from point A to letter Z all at once. I agree that the number, once we put it all together, it's a really big number. And yeah, it's no, I mean, we've got no chance to get that big number done. But now the token, you know, the task that we have is, how do we still attain what we're trying to do? Let's address the needs of the strategic plan in a way that we can get buy-in from the community so that they will support us and be respectful. And I don't know, and to Mrs. Craver's point, we've talked about doing one ballot question that has multiple years on it. We'd have to look at a ballot question with that language on it versus the approach of, let's stage it and say, these are the priorities for the first year.
You know, whatever we turn around and take on this list is the expansion point. You know, do we go for the 3 adjustment counselors and something else, and that's what we start for the first year, and then the next year this is the element of it, the strategic plan we want to go to, and then the third year we do that. In community, again, it's a fickle situation. We're never going to change people that are going to vote no. The only thing we can do is to build and educate people that are willing to come in to support.
And I agree, and the key to me is the people that want to vote yes and can't quite get past that first number. You need to make it more palatable to those folks. How are they gonna, they want to help. They want to help. It's just not, it's not feasible to do it at that juncture. So how do we make it more, as palatable as possible for those people? That's.
It's a long-range plan, like the strategic plan, it's a long-range plan. This is where we need to get.
I agree.
We know we can't ask this of you at one time, so we're going to, this is our plan, is to do it in phases.
Isn't there also something coming off the books for the? could you
Yeah,
explain that?
the debt that was issued for the middle schools and the renovation projects in Dudley, the last payment is due in FY19. So after that, the debt does go away. I will say, however, that, you know, I think there's more than enough backlog of projects that could be considered as debt exclusion type projects that the district needs to entertain, that we can certainly easily backfill that number, or at least a portion of that number.
So the obvious negative to doing that staggered approach is the public saying, here they come again, right? So here they come again, next year, here they come again. So I think it's our job, not collectively, to continue to educate about that it's not a mystery that we're coming back again, and here's why. Like that shouldn't be, it's all part of what you said, Mrs. Rabbit. It's that whole.
It's a layaway plan.
Correct, exactly.
It's a layaway plan, that's what we're doing.
And I think one of the complicating factors is the structure that the question actually has to take. Mrs. Craver, I think you had shared information from the Secretary of State, I'm sorry, from the DOR, that indicated, yes, you can do a multi-year override, but they need to be individual questions. Wasn't that correct?
Yeah, that is what it is.
Well, I think you can still do it in one question. Are you okay with this, instead of having each one of them be a separate question?
Right, but that's where the
Yes.
number gets very big for that first year.
Right.
And that's, I think, part of the committee's, realistic concern, that, we're not saying, can you give us $2 million 3 years in a row? We're saying, can you give us $6 million that first year, if that's the way that we need to structure it, to only have one question. If we could say, in one question, this much in fiscal 19, this much in fiscal 20, and this much in 21, it would be a lot clearer. It would still meet our goal.
That is what you would do. That is what you would do, and it would the ones that I've seen that have been successful have had equal amounts each year, not front-loaded, which maybe would be equal amounts each year. So the one question that you would put out would have those 3 questions as part of what the actual motion is. So you wouldn't be choosing, to do 2020 instead of all of them, you do all of them. You can also structure it as if wanting to do each one separately, but I wouldn't recommend you do that. One of the benefits that the Finance Committee said to doing one question with the 3 years was when you're talking about educating, you're taking it to the public saying, here's your strategic plan, here's the things you want to do, here's the plan to get there, and here's the steps to get us financially there in a reasonable amount of time. One of the things that you risk by doing it each year coming back is, you're right, here they come again, but there'll be some people who did not realize you were coming back. So having it all there, I think, helps you educate the public. And if you don't get it the first year, then you're coming back, and you could always try that staggered. But you're gonna listen to people, and I liked what one of the school committee members said, which is it's a democracy. They're gonna tell you what they want. So you can ask for what it is you think, and then if you don't get it, then the following year you come back and make an adjustment. You don't wanna ever do that, but I know for us, when we're going for something generally with town meeting, it might take 1 or 2 times
asking we make adjustments based on the feedback that we get.
I think it's confusing for the average person to come in and see something like that. I think I'd like one number for this year, then let's see what happens next year. I think when you have too many choices like that, it gets confusing for people to read. You see that all the time. They make mistakes. They'll vote for the second year, but not the first. I mean, it get really confusing.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
very
not,
confusing.
I'm not saying that you would have vote for each year. What I'm saying is that the vote would have.
It would encompass
He-
all the years.
can- It asked the question, can I do, that the vote would allow you to increase 500,000 this year, 500,000 next year, 500,000 this year. It's one vote, yes or no. Not, it's not.
But
it
if they
doesn't
see all
get-
those three figures down there, that would lead me to vote no, I would think. Because it's the same thing as saying 5 million, just spreading it out. It looks less bad, but it's still the same bottom figure.
But I think for the finance committee, their point was, if you're going to educate the residents, you want to educate them on the comprehensive plan, and that made sense to them.
We don't have to decide tonight, do we? This is just discussion.
It would be good if we can decide, and I think we have decided what our timeline's gonna look like. Without setting a date for an election or anything like that, just kind of having a sense of where we're going. And, you know, if we can, if it's possible to even just say, well, we're not sure exactly, but we know we don't want to do this option, that would be helpful. As soon as we can do that, and if it doesn't have to be tonight, that's okay.
Can I ask the question then, because I think just from conversation of everyone that's spoken, I don't think there is anyone sitting here thinking that we're gonna go in for the big number on one shot. I think what I'm hearing from multiple people is we're going to have to stage it, whether or not we stage it through one ballot question broken out by years, or we decide we're gonna stage it and each year is gonna be a separate ballot question, I think is what I've heard so far with everybody. I really feel that in order to make a really more informed, educated choice on this, that we should look at having draft ballot language written in those various scenarios as to a single year ballot question that would be written for an amount, and then a ballot question that would be written that there would be, over the course of 3 years, an increase to it. To your point, I think that if that becomes too complex, then you're going to not have people understand what it is we're trying to do.
It's gotta be simple.
Okay.
When we got together with the select people at our meeting, I didn't think they were for that staggered. I think they wanted to come up, in fact, Selectman Marcy said, let's go for the 5 million. He said that at the meeting. He said, we should go for the big number. But we were discussing it, and I got the feeling that they didn't like the staggered. I think they
Right.
wanted to come up with one
Number up
One
front
number
that covers us for
upfront.
3 years. The scope of that particular number, in that setting, that first time we looked at it, it did seem as though there was support for it. I think those my opinion, I'm speaking from my own thought process only, and it may apply to other people who were there too. I think you gotta process it over a little bit more time.
Right.
Because we had just presented it to them that night as a suggestion. So I wonder where they're at now with their thinking on that.
Right. But I don't really, I think they liked one number.
Yes, I agree,
Whether it's
Mrs.
5
O'Connor.
million or 2.8 or whatever. I think they wanted one
I agree with
number
that,
on
for
the
sure.
ballot. And it's simpler for the people to vote on it.
To the concern, Mrs. O'Coin, that's been mentioned regarding Dudley and ability and capacity to pay, I would really like to be in a position to do an override that I know would at least get Dudley in a position that they were fiscally healthy, because their MLC increases are going to kill town government. So I'd like to be in a position, if there's any part of a success, it's an override enough that they can still support education and still run town government successfully. So
Right.
would be great for all of us to do one and done and do our big number and get it done, and we're all good, and we can move forward with the strategic plan, but it just seems so unlikely. I just would really rather have a partial success than no success.
No, I meant that, but just come back every year instead of listing it at
Right.
the, have the understanding now we're going to come back next year for
We
an
may not
over.
come back every, maybe we decide.
Every
the
other
funding will be
year,
better, maybe
right.
other year. So I don't think
Right.
we should say we're gonna do 3 years in a row.
No.
Let's get through the first year and see what happens, because maybe
Yeah,
some
that's what
funding
I
will
meant.
come
I
around.
meant not
You
going
never
for
know.
5
Yeah.
million, but going for a realistic number the first year. Go ahead.
But if you do it that way, where you're saying, we're doing it this year, this amount, you stay silent about the real need of what the community, what the schools are for 3 to 5 years, you're clouding the issue. The issue is you need this very large amount of money. We're helping you by, this year it's a small amount, next year it's a small amount, and the following year it's a small amount. If you do not tell us as a citizen that you need the small amount here, but you're going to definitely need another small amount, and you're definitely gonna need another small amount unless you decide to really destroy your school system, then I think it's a disservice to me as a citizen. Knowing up front that we need this amount, we're making it easy, vote for one package, knowing that it's gonna be split into 3 equal parts or 3 different parts, whatever you decide for those 3 years. I know how to budget for the next 3 years and think about how that is going to improve the totality of the school system over a long period of time. I'm just asking to improve it for 1 year and maybe not the next year, and we're probably gonna fail the next year after that because you're not honest with telling us what your needs are.
That would not be dishonest.
Dishonest at all, but we're being realistic. They can't afford $5 million.
Right, I'm not asking you to ask for
But we're
$5
not
million.
dishonest at all.
I'm asking you to ask for a smaller amount with the honesty of telling us we're gonna need another small amount, and we're gonna need another small amount.
First of all,
Because that's what you need.
First of all, the 2.8 million that gets, if it gets passed the first year, is going to be there forever. So it's not like that 2.8 is going to go away. So it's
That's
already, they're
correct.
paying 2.8 for the rest of their life, basically. That's what an override does. So maybe 2.8 will get us through the next year, who knows?
Right.
Mrs. Caballo's point was that there's so many, not that I have to speak for you for sure, but there's so many variables that come up that, my gosh, if we, $2.8 million override, I mean, that's far and away the biggest one in my lifetime.
Right.
You're still talking about, I don't know about Charlton, but in Dudley, you're still talking about probably did you say a 14%?
Right.
Increase in the average tax bill, which is a really, it's a lot of money. Yes, we need it, there's no question, but I hear what you're saying. There are variables that come up year to year. Hey, one of these years, maybe, state funding will
Right,
even
who knows?
improve. I don't know, we can hope for miracles, right?
Transportation might be fully funded. You never,
Yeah.
you know, that would help.
There is
big
some
time.
movement, but,
Can
doubtful.
hope.
We certainly can't count on the cavalry coming, but you
Yeah,
never
right,
know.
but you don't know what's going to happen
But
2
if
years from now.
2.8 million passes, I mean,
That's a good job.
That's, it's
a
a
good
life.
job for us.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear on something, and I'm asking this question for myself, but I think there may be others in the room who maybe need it too. I'm operating under the impression you cannot have one ballot question where somebody's going to vote yes or no, just once, which has within it, would you vote for example, an override to increase taxes by this amount for the school system, which would be divided out this much this year, so that your taxes will increase this much this year, this much next year, and this much the year after. I thought that had to be 3 separate questions, so that people would, it was like a menu where people would be able to say, sure, this year but not next year, or next year but not this year. Am I wrong about that?
I think you should get a legal opinion on that.
Well,
We don't know what you
I actually
get an
have
advisory
Mrs.
Why waste
Craver's,
time? We don't know.
I actually have Mrs. Craver's email that she forwarded from the legal opinion from the
Okay.
DOR. Yes, see the attached advisory. In our view, the Select Board can present questions for multiple years at the same election. The override for each year must be a separate question, so for example, these would be numbered 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, so that.
So unless I'm
it's
misinterpreting the words here,
3 separate check
Three
Yes or no?
separate, three separate
Which I don't
questions, and I
think we
think that's
want
the
that.
concern, that they'd vote no in question one, no in question two, and sure, I don't care, I'm selling my house, question
leave the
three.
town,
Yeah.
That doesn't, I would not do that.
I think well, based on both the joint meeting we had and just my feeling and my experience, which isn't limited on this, I think one question is the right, one way or the other, one question,
Right.
yes or
Right.
no,
Yeah.
that's
I
it.
think, Yep, keep it simple.
Okay, so
Okay.
we don't need a vote on anything tonight. You know, we'll get to work on what some of this stuff's gonna look like, some model language possibilities and a more definitive
You
timeline.
should get the sample with just the numbers missing. They must be out there.
Yeah, we have
Yeah,
those. Yeah, I
that's
have
what we
those
should-
already.
yeah.
Thank you for, I appreciate your time on that.
Okay, thank you, and
Thank you,
we'll
Mrs. Craven.
still have more discussion,
Definitely.
definitely. Thank you, Mrs. Craver, for attending. Next on the agenda is consideration to adopt district policy GDBD. This is our second reading. And do you want to give a little summary again?
Sure.
So-
Well,
Waive the reading?
We're going to waive it, but let him give a little summary and then we'll waive
you want me
it.
to just give some background on
What
it?
we did.
So, right, just as a reminder, we're working on a policy that would provide, well, parameters for health insurance coverage in the event of the death of an active employee who has worked in the district for a minimum of 1 full year, and who was actively enrolled in district health insurance at the time of the death. And so there's a variety of levels to that based on years' experience and so forth. The only change in the policy this time from last time, based on the suggestions of the committee, is in the very middle of the policy, where it says, in the event of the survival of a single dependent, an individual plan will be substituted for a family plan. That had a period after it before, and now we've added at the same rate schedule as above. That's the only difference this time.
Okay.
Again, that was suggested by the committee, so I think we're good.
Okay, so I'll first take a vote on waiving the actual reading of the policy.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's adopted. It isn't adopted, it's waived. And now I will entertain a motion to adopt, and this is our second reading, the district policy GDBD.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, policy is adopted.
Thank you very much.
Consideration to request for home instruction, policy IHBG.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Coin. I have two tonight, one in each town, and upon review of their plans, I do believe it meets the criteria for our policy, and I recommend your approval for both.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the requests for home instruction.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous. Consideration to a request for non-resident enrollment, Mr. Desto.
Thank you, Ms. O'Coin. I received a request between meetings, and this was, as you know, the longest time we've gone between meetings since I can remember. So it was a family who was building a home in Dudley with an anticipated move-in date of December 10th. I did see the documentation on that. So at that time, I gave the family preliminary approval to start their children in grade 6 and grade 4. So they enrolled them on December 4th so that the kids could get started. And now tonight, I ask for your official approval for these children to be enrolled. And we've asked the family, obviously, to keep us updated and all that.
Okay,
So moved.
do I have a second?
Second.
Aren't they already here, though, December 10th? So
They should be, yes, but I haven't verified that, yeah.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous. And last on the agenda is consideration of requests for overnight travel. And Mr. Desto.
Thank you, and this is one that the committee has approved many years past. It's the Shepherd Hill Student Council requesting your approval of its annual trip to the Massachusetts Association of School Councils in Hyannis. This will be in March. It'll be March 7th, 8th and 9th of 2018. Think about that for a minute. You know, I think everybody here knows, but it's a very valuable trip, and so frequently they get to interact with other student council students from around the state and come back all geared up with some great ideas. The nuts and bolts of it are, again, I told you the dates. We've got 16 students who would go. They would miss 2.5 days of school. One of those days is an early release. There would be approximately a $150 cost to students. Many of the costs are defrayed through their funding, and there would be 2 chaperones, and they are the co-advisors of the student council. So that's as much information as I could think of.
Okay. Entertain a motion to approve the overnight travel.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Our next meeting dates, school committee, Wednesday, January 11th, and that will be at Shepherd Hill Regional High School at 7 p.m. Wednesday, January 24th, that will be at the Charlton Middle School at 7 p.m. Budget and Finance Subcommittee to be announced. It always takes place in the district office at 9 a.m. Wage and Benefits Subcommittee, nurse negotiations to be announced. Future agenda items, FY 2019 budget, strategic plan, school calendar. Anyone else would like to add to the agenda as of now? Okay. And so we will be entering into executive session. Mary, are you going to stay for that? Okay.
Thank you for hanging in there.
Thanks a lot. To discuss strategy with the respect to litigation or collective bargaining, if an open meeting session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body. I'll take a roll call.
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Stephanie? We're in executive session and